I borrowed Brian Benstock's suit, which is why he's in my t-shirt. I'm wearing the suit. Brian, I don't know if you can go to the tight camera right here. Can you go to the tight shot? All right, let's take a look. How's my full Windsor look? Is it looking all right?
Solid knot, man. Solid knot.
That's all I needed. I'm going to go home now, and I just wanted to make sure we recorded that on screen. But Brian, Peter, welcome to the program. Thanks for taking a few minutes out of your day to spend with us here in the Extravaganza. It's been an amazing day so far. Like Kyle was just saying, there's this element of inertia and velocity that we're feeling. And I thought, I mean, obviously, the two of you, I still am convinced that you'll probably make one of the most interesting shows on the internet if you ever decide to do that. But I wanted to talk about wisdom. Wisdom, that's experience, that's balance. Those are the things across life that not only make you a great business person or a great car dealer, but also a great contributor. So along with that, I just want to, first of all, give you a few seconds to say hello. We'll start with Brian and we'll go with Peter.
Good to see you guys. Good to be here with my colleague and friend Peter Cooper. I can't think of anybody else I'd like to be in a room with, and I'm in a virtual room, but that's a room that counts. Pardon me for being dressed down. I'm taking a little bit of a sick day today at home, but I'm real happy to be with you, Paul, and with Kyle as well.
Well, thank you so much for being here despite being sick. The man plays injured. What can I say?
That's right.
Peter Cooper. Peter, welcome, my friend. Nice hat.
So thank you. You told me specifically I needed to wear a hat, so with all respect, I needed to do this for you. I gotta tell you, it's just for me, it's a thrill to be here with my friend Brian to do this. And when I wake up in the morning, every morning my iPhone tells me what I need to do first. And first I got to check my Aura ring. The second thing is I got to call Brian Benstock and to get my wisdom. But the reality of it is, Paul, I have you to thank for that tremendous introduction, and we've formed a great relationship. And every day is about figuring out how we can be a little bit, as we are getting older, a little bit wiser. So thank you for having us for this segment.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Okay, so we talked a lot today about a lot of technology changing, a lot of dealers pivoting and moving, a lot of, Bob Lanham was just talking about the dealers that were texting him when Facebook changed its name to Meta, and we're like, hey, Bob, I want to be the first dealership in the metaverse, right? So there's obviously this...
Oh, please. I guarantee you that dealer's not even in the digital space. Dealers are so full of crap.
Probably not.
Bob, please, come on.
We lost Bob in the metaverse. So what I wanted to say along the lines of that, we have a lot of people paying attention to the future. Glenn Lundy was on telling us that the futurist that Warren Buffett cites is saying in the next, the next 10 years, we're going to accelerate the equivalent of like 100 years.
5 years is 100 years, yeah.
So all that being said, I think it's very normal for when things are accelerating quick. The first thing to go out the window is thoughtful wisdom. Thoughtfulness can go out the door when we're moving so fast. So Brian, we'll start with you. Somebody who moves fast but is also very thoughtful. What is the piece of wisdom or the staple that holds your feet to the ground when everything else is flying by at a rapid pace?
I think so. We're on a planet that spins at 1,000 miles an hour, and I think it's, for me, the strategy that's worked is really to be in one place and let that watch the changes and then react, or anticipate the changes and act in ahead of the anticipation. Both strategies work well. I think a lot of people are trying to catch up. And the gentleman you referenced speaking to Bob about, I want to be the first in the metaverse. That's a wonderful thought, but have you conquered the digital space now? And there's so much more there for us in the digital space. And I do agree, the metaverse is going to be something that's worth taking a good look at. But before we start looking at reality, we need to look at reality. Are we growing our businesses? Are we doing something today to prepare us for when business normalizes? And I think once a brain is stretched, it never goes back to the same shape. And I think once my financial statements get stretched like they've been in such a wonderful way, I don't ever want them to go back to normal. So we've been working very hard on what's the plan to keep these wonderful times going, and what is in our control, and how do we make sure that the robust net profits that we're enjoying now stick around long after the pandemic is gone.
Peter Cooper, same question to you. When things are moving so fast and changing so fast, what's the wisdom to keep your feet planted on the ground but still allow you to pivot?
So I think it's pretty basic for me, is that first of all, is we have to do a little bit of what you talked about, Paul, and what's predictable, what's foreseeable. Speed is a constant. But the one thing that I learned early on is that life is made up of impact moments. COVID just happened to be an impact moment. And for most dealers, it happened to them. And the reality of it is we've always looked at, say, how do we make our own impact moments? So how do we prepare for what's coming so that we can control our destiny versus something out there, our destiny controlling us? And it's very basic and it's very fundamental. You know, as B said, we're going to snap back and then things are going to change after that. The reality of it is, how do we prepare for what's predictable, what's foreseeable, and make our own impact moments? Don't let it happen to you.
So what is it that you say to the people who are constantly wanting to push the ball forward, but maybe being a little too foolhardy in doing it or too enthusiastic? How do you reel them back in and calibrate them? Because I think that that's a challenge that a lot of dealers may have, because they have some people on their team that are trying to push the envelope, that are trying to stretch and flex and redo systems, install new technology, install new processes to react. But dealers might not know how to handle that in a helpful way. It'll either shut it down and say, no, we're going to go super slow, or maybe they'll go too far, right, and break things. So how would you coach somebody how to deal with that, you know, that person who really just wants to change and try everything?
So I think early on, you know, Brian pushed me pretty hard in an area, and he gave me this book to read. It was called An Acre of Diamonds. And it really was, how do we address one thing at a time? And how do you look what we currently have, and how do we maximize that? And the reality of it is, I think that most dealers have been very, very complacent. You know, they've made a lot of good money for many, many years. And, you know, change is, they're allergic to it. And as I said, if I'm not getting up every morning, first thing, talking to Brian, say, okay, what are we going to go to? What are you going to work on today? What am I going to work on today? You know, change is a constant here. And I think that the reality of it is, I say to the dealers, you got to get comfortable with it and you got to get used to it. And if you're not prepared to do that, I don't have 3 magic words or a silver bullet that will get people to do that.
Brian, how would you respond to that question?
I think the dealers are in a profit coma right now. I think they're in trouble. And you know, the seeds of failure are planted in the soil of success. We're all being really successful right now. And we've forgotten something very critical. The barbarians are at the gate. The barbarians that are looking to take over our industry, not just our dealerships, our industry, are at the gate. And the barbarians are bigger, badder, meaner, tougher than anything we've ever faced before. Scott Galloway, Professor Galloway, has a video that came out last week where he talked about the growth of Apple. And it took Apple 42 years to become a $1 trillion company. It took them 2 years to become a $2 trillion company. And now they're approaching $3 trillion as they enter into the automotive space. And, you know, I would say to my colleague Peter and anybody else that's watching, what's your plan to compete with the best CEO in history? And I think Tim Cook will go down as the best CEO in history. He took over Apple from Steve Jobs. Imagine that, taking over Steve Jobs' job, and then just keeping it where it is would have been fantastic. But he took it many folds where Jobs had it. And now that they're entering into our industry with the Apple car, all of a sudden, you know, I'm telling my team, how do we compete with those guys? How do we compete with Tim Cook? How do we compete with Apple? And forget the nonsense of competing with the other dealers. And I, you know, a buddy of ours, Kenny Hicks, has a saying, and I think it's appropriate here. Many dealers are doing what's tantamount to rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic after it hit the iceberg. It ain't gonna make a damn difference what you're doing. Now imagine asking Elon Musk. Imagine this, we're at a party and Elon Musk is there, and Peter Cooper goes up to Elon and says, Peter Cooper, dealer, I have one question for you. And Musk says, Peter, what's the question? Which DMS are you using? Is it CDK or is it Reynolds? It's ridiculous. And this is a question we're asking. They're using an intelligence that monitors their advertising, right? Every customer interaction, their transactions, the website visits, is all in one space. And I think we need to get away from that DMS mentality and get to an IMS, which is an intelligence management system. How do we predictively market to customers in advance of their own needs? And I think this is really what's keeping me up at night, is how do I get out ahead of the Carvanas and the Tim Cooks and the Jeff Bezoses of the world?
So, Brian, I think this is a question that maybe, we've got some probably large dealers, dealer groups on the call, or, some smaller dealers, but and we heard from Alan Haig earlier about just the buy-sell activity, especially, but to the dealers that are, your 80 car a month store, 100 car a month store that are maybe listening, or a salesperson listening going, well, how do I even get to that thought level? Like, what's the next step for someone like that that's going, well, you want me to compete, but I'm locked in this 5-year Reynolds contract that they're being held back by their own preconceived notions. I understand that, but what do you say to them? What's the next step for them to get out of the weeds of that and start looking at those bigger players?
The biggest room in dealership is a room for improvement. I would love to be an 80-car store, especially when you look at, let's say, your most valuable transaction. Your most valuable transaction is likely an exchange transaction. You take somebody that's in your service department driving your car, servicing with you, and sell them a new version of that product. For us, you sell a new car, you sell a used car, you sell service, you retain your customer, and that would be a great challenge, right? To be able to go to that dealership and do one transaction a day in the service department. If they're open 25 days, you take your 80-car store now to a 125 car store, 120 car store when you count the used car sales as well, and that could dramatically impact the dealer's bottom line. So whatever level you're at, there's always another level there looking for that, and I think that's the challenge that we should put on us. And Peter and I have very different markets and very different stores, but I think we're able to, as colleagues, to push each other. And he kicks me in the ass every now and then, and I kick him right back. With the understanding we're dealing with two different, vessels, two different ships, two different markets, but there are similarities there. We both have males and females in our market. As long as we understand that our markets are more similar than dissimilar, I think we can help each other along the way.
We have a few minutes left. I always like to leave dealers, industry partners in this industry who are paying attention with your encouragement to them heading into 2022, a mindset. What would you encourage their mindset to be moving in? Brian, we'll start with you and we'll end with you, Peter.
The mindset has to be one of Paul Revere. The British are coming, we're under attack. And, I think if you are going to be complacent now, you're going to be in trouble. And I don't care how big you are. You ain't big compared to, AutoNation's not big compared to Apple. Paragon's not big compared to Apple. And they're coming. And so, I'm challenging myself and my team. What's your plan when they come to your neighborhood? What's your plan when Apple's pushing a message to every one of the people that are holding one of these and saying, hey, come buy our car? They've got trade cycle management down cold. They've got development down cold, design down cold, marketing down cold. Very, very strong customer satisfaction. So they're going to be a formidable player, and I look forward to the change in the marketplace.
Very nice. Peter Cooper, you get the final word.
Yeah, so I gotta just piggyback off of what Brian said. If you listen to everything that Brian talked about, you can understand this is the voice of somebody who every day gets up to say, how do I go out not to run the race, but to win the race? And the mindset is the best of times are really in front of us. If we look at it and say that's our opportunity is coming, it's predictable, it's foreseeable, and we are formidable opponents. But you got to get in that mindset today, and you can't let it wait to happen to you. You got to do exactly what Brian's doing day in and day out with his team. We're doing with our team every day is what are we doing next? What are we doing next? And how are we staying ahead of that? And how do we actually not look to stay ahead of it, but how are we actually, they say, you go the extra mile. There's not a lot of traffic out there. We got to be out there. And sometimes, I look at Brian. He just finished the marathon again. His last few miles can be a bitch, but you got to be at it every single day. I mean, he and I are up every morning. We're working out. He's working out in New York. I'm working out in Pennsylvania. We're all guys. And we know the guys we're competing. Yes, you are. The guys we're competing against, are young guys, and we ain't about to give up. We may be older, but we'll be a lot wiser and a lot smarter how we do it. So again, Paul, I congratulate you on having a great year. I congratulate you personally, on your family, on developing your business. And again, it was an honor for me to share with this time with you and Kyle.
Peter Cooper, Brian Benstock, all of our best to you and your families and your loved ones. Brian, feel better soon, and we're looking forward to making a whole lot of trouble together in 2022.
Thank you, gents.